My name is Paddy Lineen. I was born in County Mayo, in the county hospital, where I was resuscitated by the late Kathleen Duffy, matron of the hospital, for which I am eternally grateful. I grew up in Achill. My father ran a small post office and shop, and my mother was teaching. I went to the secondary school locally in Sculdownet. When I became 15 or 16 and did the intercert, I went home after the exam and I said to my mum and dad that I wasn't going to school anymore. So they, being a little wiser than I was at the time, sent me off to a boarding school in Pallaskenry where I was 2 years with the Salesians.
Where did you go to national school?
I went to the local national school in the monastery in Bonacurry, taught by the Franciscan monks at the time.
And who were the teachers there at the time?
Brother Sebastian and Mrs. Kilban.
Was it a two-teacher school, was it?
It was a two-teacher school. Brother Sebastian was one of the Franciscans. He was a man with one glass eye, and you never really were sure whether he was looking at you or at somebody else. So you had to be very careful.
Was it strict?
It was fairly strict, but he was a gentleman, really.
Look how well preserved he is. He's looking great. He's like a man half his age for a man who's coming into retirement.
Yeah. He's only 21.
How many, Paddy, did you have?
Look at the colour of his hair.
How many did you have?
Maybe he was like, we have a few nice things for the children in the house because we have a discovery trail. And I'll show you what that is, and the children can do that later if they want to. You have to go around and look for things in the house, okay? And then later on, if you want to, if there's time, there's a tree trail out on the grounds and you have to go and look for the trees. So first of all, to tell you, I suppose, the house is privately owned. It's owned by Jeremy and Jennifer Brown. He's the 11th Marquess of Sligo and he's the 13th Earl of Baltimore. He, his wife and 5 daughters own and run the estate. Basically, there's the house itself. There's about 500 acres associated with the house. We have a big pirate adventure park, which most of the children know about, with a pirate ship and pirate plunge ride and so on. Big caravan and camping park and adventure activities. So some of the adults might like to come back another day for our zorbing. Have you heard about the zorbing? So in terms of the house then, the children will know about Grania Whale, the pirate. You know about her, don't you? And the pirate queen, Grace O'Malley, is connected with the site. Because long, long ago, 500 years ago, there was a castle here, a high tower castle. And there's a castle out on Achill Island, of course, because Grace O'Malley has great connections with Achill Island, doesn't she? Kildavnet out on Achill Island is one of her castles as well. So there was a castle here like that, and it was called Copper-na-Mart. And that gives the Irish to Westport even today. And the castle was here, and Owen O'Malley was the man who owned the castle. And back in the 1500s, Ireland didn't have 32 counties, it had 40 kingdoms. And the area all around here, out as far as Achill and out towards Croagh and beyond, was called the Kingdom of Wool. And Owen O'Malley was chieftain of the O'Malley clan. He owned the castle, and he owned big wooden boats called galleys. And with those galleys, he could sail to Scotland or down to France and Spain, and he could trade with the things he had on the land. But who did he have? Didn't he have an only daughter called, what was her name? Grace, or in Irish her name was Grania. And of course she longed to go out on the boats with her father, and all the time he'd say to her, no, you're not coming with me, because the sea can be very rough and unpredictable. There's 100 hard-working men on these boats. I don't want my only daughter out there, a chieftain's daughter. And as well as that, there's so much to do with the castle. And out he went, and by the time he discovered her on the boat, he had no choice but to employ her, give her jobs to do. And by the time he came back to the castle, he said she'd been a great help, a really keen sailor, and he was going to bring her out again on the boats with him.
Paddy, don't be eating all the buns, leave some for the rest of us. Yeah, they're good for you, are they?
I don't know this one.
Check them out. Yeah.
Rosie.
around your neck, it doesn't look good. Makes you old.
I am old.
All right, Paddy, what's your last words? What's your last words? What do you think? Great. What do you think of it?
It's brilliant.
Brilliant, yeah.
There's an envelope on it there, look.
Come on.
Please be aware that there has been a virus going around the area of Westport in recent times. Please treat all possible carriers of the virus with haste, using any medication at your disposal, particularly if you may be intending to travel. Persons under the age of 13 are known to be particularly susceptible and must be treated first. Regards, Infection Control, Westport House.
See what's in the bag.
With big needles.
It reminds me of
Sure, look at someone.
Somebody has to take them here.
Here, take it and hand it around.
You can sit on the train, guys.
Hand them around.
There's more behind you, lad.
There's this about another now.
So everybody has to sign their name on the special form.
What kind of tablets did you have there? Licorice, the old cure for ulcers, is it?
Yes.
That's right.
That has to go into the thing and we throw it out in the bags for them all. The names are on it. Is there anything more? I'm a child.
You don't get service like this from here on air.
That's true. I hope you didn't get that second one.
Quick.
I'm afraid somebody's
Right, Paddy, give the commentary about what we're at here. Where are we now?
Leaving Westport House station.
The Pirate Express.
The Pirate Express. Full of gangsters.
A lot of pirates aboard here.
Second childhood, darling. Second childhood.
The Mammal Rail.
Give me a kiss. Go on, give me a kiss. Go on.
He's good practice.
See the size of our swans in Westport.
Don't distract. I love the monkey chunky. I love this. We're here for. Hi guys.
Look at the faces.
There, that's your cousins. That's your cousins. This be any good on house calls, do you think?
Be a little bit slow.
That's a familiar face up there, isn't it?
Monkey chunky. And all little monkeys in the back.
Got my head knocked off here.
Huh?
I got my head knocked off.
It's just abandoned. Monkeys and pineapples.
All the way, Monkey Junction.
They might be of more value to you. What do you got to say for Grandad Paddy? Good luck. I'm sure it's yeah. Is he a good doctor, was he? Was he any good as a doctor, was he?
No, they're not open. There's always good as a doctor.
Was he? Was he? Did you ever give an injection, huh? Did you ever give an injection?
Yeah, I remember him giving me an injection when I was 4 on foot. I cried for like ages and then he gave me a lollipop.
The lollipop pop cured you, was it?
Yeah.
That was good, yeah.
Says.
I didn't know you were bad. That's the new medicine, isn't it?
That's what all the sweets.
That's the new pill.
That's what all the sweets are for.
Oh, yeah, very cold here, isn't it?
Is that stored on a memory
The
disk?
handyman is going to cut the cake. Beautifully decorated by Val, who was secretary for Paddy for 20.
Looks a bit tough, Paddy, is it?
Paddy's service with the GMS goes back to January the 1st, 1973, which interestingly was the inception of the General Medical Services, which followed on the dispensary system. The story goes that Dr. Ned King's back gave out from pressure of work running Ballycroy, Achill, Inishturk, Clare and Inishbiggle Islands single-handed, following the retirement of Dr. Robert Donnelly. Ned approached Paddy, then an SHO in Castlebar, studying for his diploma in obstetrics. Paddy stepped into the breach as he always would. Paddy went to medical school in NUI Galway, where he had the good fortune to bump into an art student from Cork, Mairead Lehan. Together, they have made a wonderful, happy and successful partnership and reared a close-knit family of 8 adoring daughters. And also Nella stepped in to do reception duties from time to time until her husband Thomas whisked her away from us to Limerick. Having practiced from Morally for the first 3 years, he moved to Achill Sound in 1976, where the house in St. Fidon's Road was finally built. Surgeries were carried out from the cramped HFC Matchbox Clinic until in 2003 the newly built current HSE state-of-the-art premises opened. Paddy put considerable thought and effort into the design and layout of the premises, which are a vast improvement on the former. Of retirement. Will Paddy Lineen find the days long and boring? I think not. Paddy's interests are numerous and wide-ranging. He is an avid philatelist, and Mairead fears she may become a stamp widow once Paddy gets wheeling and dealing on eBay. There is the yacht, engine reconditioned and hull repaired, all ready for off. There is the garden and the greenhouse awaiting his attention. There is the Achill Archaeological and Historical Society. And there's the writing. There is definitely a talent there for writing beyond referral letters. But most of all, for Paddy, there's the family. An ever-expanding clan. At the last count, the grandchildren numbered 16, and they swarm over the Lineen house on the slightest pretext. The other day I arrived, and it was a birthday party. Mairead Juniors. And nearly all 16 were there to blow out the candles.
Thank you, Edward, for those kind words. A little bit exaggerated, I think. I'm delighted to see so many old friends. They're here from school days, from college days, from my work in different places. People that I worked with all over, and slept with some of them. This table here is the half safe. Myself and John built the half safe.
What's it say?
About 1954. John reckons that it wasn't really half safe. But I never fell out of it. I was always interested, of course, in sailing and boats. And later on then, I spent a little while with the Salesians in England and the novitiate. And I was telling a story today to Ollie about this guy here on my right. I had gone to the novitiate at the end of August, and I was on retreat, walking up and down in the quadrangle with 3 other novices, and the novice master came out and fell into step alongside us, and he stooped down and he said, "Brother Patrick, you have a baby brother, and all is well." And that was this guy, John. And I didn't meet John for another 3 years. I stumbled across this lassie from West Cork, a very shy country girl, and I can't get rid of her. But anyhow, here we are tonight. I've had 40 years of very delightful working time in general practice in Achill. I couldn't have had better colleagues. After Dr. Edward Ned King passed away, his son Edward, who was here, got the appointment. He came for a short while, I think. And he's still here. I know he's, yes. Dr. Bernadette came to join us 1980, was it? 87? I can't really remember, the years have flown by so fast. And she never left us. She came and did locums for a little while, and then she came as an assistant under a particular scheme. And we were lucky enough to be able to retain her, and the people of Achill have really been served superbly by all of my colleagues ever since they came. My daughter, well, Noreen is the one who is taking up my own particular portion of the practice, and I think people are in very capable hands. In Achill, we became very modern at one stage. We got a secretary who was a nurse, and that secretary, the very first Achill secretary, is here, Nora Holland. And I'm sure the poor woman is probably dying to go out for a smoke.
And horse and talking.
Minor for Paddy Lineen. From the big picture book in the cupboard under the stairs, I grew infused with radical astonishment. There were gullies, brown rock landscapes, wind-harried prairies, hominids rising out of holes in the earth like poppies, or milkweed flourishing in the desert after rain. Then there was my mother, with her swollen breasts, breaking a raw egg into a glass of Guinness, swallowing it down. My sister, big with the billions of the Earth's years, beginning to shift inside her.
One thing I'd like to put Paddy up on is fancying himself as a driver, taxiing. Has anybody ever taken a journey with David? That's all it takes, yeah. 20 minutes out the door in the first place. The next 20 minutes is spent going back in for what's been left behind. And then you go to the front passenger's door and you this seat. Is there a seat there? Sleep manometer, bags, medical news, medical times, waders, fishing rods, reels, and after you've cleared enough to sit down, you hope that what you're sitting on hasn't got anything sharp. And then that bloody car, it starts to move before it starts to run. And it just glides silently out towards and then as you're going through the pillars, the beeping starts. Beep, beep, beep.
And I also have a back page to get from the medical office in Achill, because I was a training nurse with Paddy for years out in the Badlands at 4 in the morning when we had to try and keep 5 or 6 men held down while Paddy was stitching up their trousers after being coming from a dance in Achill the whole way out to Ballacroy. And he'd say to me, "Nurse, go out and get my coat." And I got strange looks from the fellas that were hanging around the place. So I had to bring in the crowbar to keep them at bay, because I was the only male nurse ever at that time, 40 years back. Will you come with me to Ballacroy, because we could be killed?
Just on behalf of the medics that are here and talking about the years of Paddy, I suppose I remember Paddy cycling into college. Where were you cycling, Paddy? You used running anyway a lot of the time. I can remember him in the athletic club, as Brian said earlier there, he was big into that, and then one day in college we heard he was a boxing champion. I don't know where the hell he did it or how it happened, but it came out of nowhere. But just to say on behalf of the profession, Paddy and I, we go back. Paddy and Marie and to myself and Frank and Eileen and Ollie and Tina and Bob and Sheila have all worked way back in Castlebar Hospital over 40 years ago together at different times.
That's what happened to it.
Yeah. There were different times then, but there were happy times and great times, and we all worked. I mean, we complain about the services now, but we didn't have all the good things in those days. But we had a great time and we all worked very hard. We worked under Mr. Paddy Bresnan, who was the youngest county surgeon ever appointed in 1939 in Castlebar. I'm sure some of you can remember him. And he was great to work under, and we all just had a great time working together. So we've come on since then and we've done a lot in the medical world. And for me anyway, and for the rest of us, Paddy was always there. He was busy doing things in Achill and busy looking after the whole lot of you down there. But in terms of medicine and trying to achieve things for Mayo, you could always be sure Paddy had come to the meetings and he'd be there working hard to help everybody. So on behalf of us all, I'd just like to thank Paddy very much, and Maria, thank you very much.
So it's the first national language, all of it I can remember. And it's cool today. Amen Shefin, the Momogari, Tochus Popper, the Veagumum, Ach Jas Schriefen, and Mosamone, and Mogolen, the Very Land. Chenier and Wimpy, Areen and Groster, in Schlacht Homer, the Lemmejan. This Berlin, the Weiches, Bovin, Lum Trochter, Ach, Fire Gear, will man Schlacht Fang.
Oh, Mrs. McGrath, Her husband said, would you like to make a doctor out of our son Ted? With a stethoscope and a big tall hat. Now Mrs. McGrath, wouldn't you like that? Would me to-raya, folly little to-raya. Well, Ted came up to the big city for to study medicine at UCG. But he didn't get on too well, I fear, for he took to the women and he took to the beer with me to-raya, folly little to-raya.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah,